I came to my mother not as a winner, but as a man who had everything burned behind him, his business, his marriage, even his own name in business circles. There was only one woman left, the one who had held my hand when I had my first fever at the age of 7. I came to her as if to a last refuge, and yes, I brought a briefcase full of money with me. Not for me. Not to impress her. But because it was leftovers. The charred bones of everything I'd once built. She lived in the same house she'd lived in 30 years ago. No GPS, no security, no cameras. Just the old cherry tree by the window and the creaking floorboards in the hallway. When she opened the door, she looked at me as if I were not her son but the type from the blood pressure pill commercials, foreign, familiar, suspicious. "Did you recognize yourself as the prodigal son?" she asked, her face unchanged. "I'm just visiting." "Aha. Just here." With a briefcase and a guilty face. I walked in without permission. Dropped my bag. The house smelled like time had stopped here, chamomile tea, old linoleum, and an air filled with a past from which there was no escape. We hardly spoke at dinner. I ate in silence, as I had when I was a child, when I knew I was waiting for the belt. She was still pouring tea into a cut glass and looking through me. "I have a favor to ask," I said when the plate was empty. "Not on you, but I need you to keep something." I set the case on the table. It clicked, as if a new character had appeared in the house. "There's money in there. All of it. 10 million. All that's left. I don't want to take it into town. I don't want anyone to know. I'm going away for a while, not on the run, not in a panic. I just need to disappear, for a while. And you're the only person I can still trust with anything more than numbers." She stared at the briefcase for a long moment. Then at me. "You trust me? After all these years?" "Yes," I said. "Because in spite of everything, I still believe that if there's one person in your life who remembers you falling off your bike, then all is not lost." She got up silently, took the case and went into the bedroom. The next morning, she was gone. I didn't believe it at first. I thought maybe she'd gone to the store. Maybe she'd gone for a walk. Maybe she just decided to give me time to sleep. But the clock was ticking. The phone was silent. The door to her bedroom was ajar. The bed was made. Nothing on the nightstand. It was as if she hadn't just left, she'd vanished. The safe in the closet was empty. The briefcase was gone. With it, the last of the money and everything I could ever call trust. I sat on the floor and stared at a point. No anger. No tears. Just silence. I could feel something inside breaking, quietly, but forever. You trust because you want to believe. Because you've been taught from childhood that a mother is someone who will never betray you. Who will stand between you and the world. Who will put a blanket over you, even when you're a 40-year-old man. And then there's just silence. And an empty house. And you know what the most frustrating part was? I wasn't even surprised. Because maybe I already knew who she really was. I just didn't want to believe it. I went to the station. On automatic. Not because I believed they'd help me, I'm an adult, it's not the first time I've lived in the world. But because I wanted it to be on record, it happened. That my mother disappeared. That I'm not crazy. That this wasn't a dream or a trust experiment. The officer was young, with a face that even an ATM machine wouldn't believe. "Your mother disappeared." "That's right. Disappeared. Gone. She was and she wasn't." He wrote a couple lines in the file, looking past me. Asked if she was suffering from memory loss. I wanted to laugh. My mother remembers the day I stole cookies from the cupboard in 1992. She's like a living encyclopedia of petty grudges and forgotten debts. I walked out of there with a piece of paper that was officially called a statement. But in reality, it was nothing. A piece of paper to keep myself calm. Went back to the house. Sat in the kitchen. In an old chair that creaked like it knew I'd come in beaten. And then I started making phone calls. My mother's friend. A neighbor. The elderly cab driver who used to take her to the clinic. Nobody did anything. Not a word, not a breath. And that's when, for the first time, I felt afraid. Not for the money. For the fact that my whole life now rested on one fact: I had trusted. And I was betrayed. But you know what's scarier? When you start thinking maybe it's my fault. Maybe I didn't come to the mother I remember. Maybe she was always like that. Only I didn't want to see it. Sitting by the window, I remembered how as a child she hid stashes from my father, how she wrote lists of debts on the refrigerator and never forgave anyone for being late. She wasn't just strict. She was ironclad. And maybe all her love was just a system: as long as you're useful, you're protected. And I wasn't useful anymore. I was a grown man who came not with flowers but with a briefcase. And I wasn't a son to her, I was a chance. And still, I still couldn't stop hoping she'd come back. Tell me it was a mistake. That she was just scared. That this was a test. And I passed. But the house was quiet. And I was broken. Only now it wasn't the kind of pain you could pour whiskey over or hide under a suit. It was a pain that smelled like the dust of old photo albums and the cold of an empty safe. And damn it, if you think I've given up, you don't know me. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in her chair and looked out the window. It wasn't raining, the stars were clear, as if on purpose. No sign of tragedy, no drama. Outside, there was silence. And inside me, a swarm of thoughts that buzzed like an old lamp in the hallway. I remembered bringing home a kitten in 5th grade. My dad was against it, and she said, if he brought it, he must feel someone needs it. She protected me then. And now, I've become someone in need myself. But no one stepped forward. No one said, leave him alone, he's just lost. I remembered how she'd argue with the cashiers if they got the discount wrong. How she counted every penny. How she guarded the filing cabinet. And somehow it became clear to me that a person who had spent her life clenching the world in her fist wouldn't just run away. No, she had it all figured out. And maybe she even thought she was doing the right thing. And me, I sat in the chair and thought that maybe I wasn't a son, but just a last investment. One last chance for control. Toward morning, the old house phone rang. I jumped up, my heart sank into my heels. Hello? Silence. Mom? A click. That was it. And that's when I realized, this story is just beginning. Because if someone thinks they can steal not just money, but my trust, and disappear without a trace, they don't know who they're dealing with. In the morning, I put my bag in the trunk and drove into town. Just like that, no plan, no navigator. Just intuition and the old habit of looking for logic where there was only emotion left. First I stopped at the bus station. I showed a photo of my mother. The girl at the ticket office looked tired. Maybe it's her. Maybe not. There's a lot of them around here. You'd remember. Small, with a metal case. Oh, a suitcase. Yeah. She was. Took a bus south. Didn't say where. Bought a ticket with cash. That was her. I got in the car. And I realized, if she really did run, it wasn't just fear. It was a plan. I stopped at a gas station, asked the guy at the register. He said he saw her. That she was talking on the phone, quietly but sharply. And then she got into a black car. I drove back angry. Not at her. At myself. For letting myself be fooled again. For being a grown man with a beard and years of experience, a little boy with hope again. But you know what really shook me up? When I saw the sticker she had put on my rearview mirror from when I was a kid. It was scuffed, but it still read. Family is not a place. It's a choice. At that moment, I almost hit the curb. Because I realized she'd already made her choice. And now it's my turn. I got home late that night. Everything in the kitchen was just as I'd left it. The mug. The chair. An open packet of munchies. Only the light in the hallway flickered, as if reminding me that I was alone in this house now. I didn't heat up dinner. I didn't turn on the music. I just sat down on a stool, rested my forehead in my palms, and froze. You know, there are times when even anger can't save you. When you realize you've passed the point of no return. That now you're not just deceived. You're different. Colder. Quieter. More wary. I stood up, took out a piece of paper, and wrote one sentence. You've made your move. Now it's my turn. I left it on the same table where the briefcase was. I went to sleep. No dreams. No illusions. Just the truth that stabbed like ice in my rib cage. And in the morning, I knew what to do. For the next 3 days, I lived like a man who had lost not only his mother, but the very ground beneath his feet. Drinking coffee as if it could restore clarity. I slept as if it could fix anything. And then he just got up and drove. No itinerary, no clear plan. I knew one thing. If she decided to disappear, she didn't do it spontaneously. My mother wasn't a woman who got emotional. She was a strategist. If she disappeared, she must have left a trail somewhere. First thing I did was go to the motel they told me about at the station. The neon over the entrance blinked, like it wanted to tell me something but couldn't. The receptionist was fat, with a newspaper in his hands and the face of a man who had long since stopped being surprised by strange visits. Number 12. Yes, there was one, he nodded. Alone. No luggage. Just that suitcase of yours. Metal, like in the movies. Did she leave anything behind? Did you say? No. I paid for the night. She left before dawn. I went to the room. It was empty. Clean. Sterile. Only thing in the trash was a napkin with a lipstick print on it. Exactly her color. That's it. Next lead is the bus ticket office. Same girl as the other day. Said she was going south. No specifics. South. I see. Hundreds of miles. Thousands of motels. Millions of reasons to get lost forever. I called a man I once saved the ass of in a bad case. A private detective. Old, grumpy, but effective. Are you sure you want to know where she is? He asked me when I texted him the photo. Worse than not knowing, just not knowing. He responded instantly. 2 days later, he sent me the address. No comment. A small country village where even the dogs walk. I drove in at night. There were lights in the house. The windows were curtained. The car under the carport was old. But most importantly, I recognized her silhouette in the window. She was there. I didn't break in. I just sat in the car and watched. After an hour, the lights went out. I came back in the morning. Knocked. She opened the door. Gray hair, tired eyes. And no surprise. "You're here. What did you think? That you'd be smart enough not to show up? Where's the briefcase?" She turned away. "You don't understand." "No, Mother, you don't understand. You stole. Not money. Trust. Do you understand? You did." She was shaking. Hands clasped. As if protecting herself from the words. "I didn't take it. Saving." I laughed. "No joy. What were you saving from? From me? From the world? From the past?" She looked at me. And there was pain there. But not guilt. "I know what you're thinking. But you don't know the whole story." I took a step closer. "Then tell it. Tell me now. Otherwise I'll leave and you'll never see me again." She hesitated. Then she went into the back of the house. She came back a minute later with an envelope. An old, yellow envelope. My father's handwriting on it. My father died 20 years ago. And all of a sudden, a letter. "He left it for you." I kept it. Because I didn't want you to know. I opened the envelope. There was a note. One sentence. "If she takes it, you're not ready." And that was it. I didn't understand. I was furious. What does that mean? It means that he and I had a plan. That we knew you'd come back one day. But we didn't know what with. Love? Or a briefcase? I exploded. I didn't come back with money. I came back because I needed you. A person. A mother. And I got what? She cried. But she didn't make excuses. I was afraid. That the money would break you again. That you'd close up again. You'd go away. Die inside yourself. Is that why you decided to steal? To educate you? No. To test me. I turned around and walked away. I didn't know what was worse, the betrayal or the whole weird game of messages from the other side. I stopped on the doorstep. "Is there anything left in the case?" "Yes," she whispered. "What?" "Your truth. But not now." I got in the car. I lit a cigarette. And I realized I didn't want an answer. I wanted an end. And I'm gonna find it. Even if I don't like it. I didn't go right away. I just sat behind the wheel, huddled in the seat, as if it could hide me from the ridiculousness of it all. A letter from a dead father? A maturity test? What's next? A message from a dog from the other side of the world? I stared at that house, old, shabby, with peeling paint and curtains like a bad soap opera. And then I remembered how my father and I had painted this facade in the summer of '95. He was cursing at me for using the brush too greasy. And my mother standing on the porch with a lemonade and bossing me around like we were a family business. It was simple back then. Now it's crap wrapped up in psychology. I went back to the motel. Old room. Same lamp blinking over the mirror. I tossed my keys on the table, plopped on the bed, and fell into the past. Her words rang in my head, I checked. As if I was her project to grow to maturity. As if 10 million was a button she pushed to see how I would react. The next morning, I went to the detective's office. He met me with a cup of coffee and a face that said, "You're not ready." "There's something else," he said. "I thought you didn't want to know. But now I see it's time." He pulled out his tablet, opened the video. A surveillance camera. The date is 2 weeks ago. My mother. She comes out of the bank. No briefcase. But with another man. A man. Tall. Glasses. Simple suit. And a hand on her back. Careful. Caring. Too close. Who is it? We don't know. But he's not random. I watched them get in the car. And my mother laughing. Laughing. Easy. Like I haven't heard her laugh in 20 years. What was that? A conspiracy? A play? Or, a second life she'd started behind my back? I walked out without a word. The car started, as if it could feel the tension in my fingers. I was driving blind. The road went off into the distance, and there was only one thought running through my mind. If this is all a game, I'm no longer a pawn. I pulled over to the side of the road. I got out. And for the first time, I screamed. For the first time. Not out of anger. It was helplessness. Because I thought I was grown up, smart, cold-blooded. And now I was just a son. An ordinary son who'd been abandoned. But not left in silence. Left with a task. With a secret. With a burden. I wiped my face. I went back to the car. I took out my old notebook. And I wrote. I'm not giving up. But if this was all a test, let them prepare for the real answer. And then. I drove back. Not to her. I went back to where it all started. Because it was time to look into something I'd been afraid to open up until now. My father's house was in the middle of nowhere. We hadn't visited him in a long time. After the funeral, it was locked up. My mother said she didn't want to go back there. I just couldn't. Now it was like a ghost, dilapidated, creaking, but still alive. Like it was waiting for me. I opened the door with the same key I'd carried in my pocket for the last 20 years. Inside it smelled of damp and memories. Pictures on the walls. An old chair. Letters. I sat down at the table where my father had once written his notes. And suddenly I realized, this house was the only place where I could get an answer. I started going through the drawers. I found notebooks. Diaries. Anything that could explain why he decided to leave me that sentence. Why he and my mother thought I should be tested. And I found it. A page from his diary, dated a month before he died. If he comes back empty-handed, he's ready. If he comes back with money, he still doesn't know what's important. And that's when I realized, the two of them had been playing together. All their lives. Even after death. I got back in the car. Tired. But clear inside. Everything was clear now. Not the money. Not the briefcase. About me. And I was ready to give them my final move. Because on this board, I am no longer a piece. I'm a player. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't go to my friend's house. I went to the only place where I could still speak honestly, the cemetery. My father's grave stood in the shade of an old oak tree, as if the tree was trying to shield him from all this human nonsense. I stood there for a long time. Talked out loud. Not prayers. Not of gratitude. But anger. Questions. Sarcasm. I asked, why? Why did you adults think you could control my life, my trust, my pain like a toy? My father, of course, was silent. And in that silence I heard more than in all the conversations we had ever had. I went back to town. Late. At dawn. And the first thing I did was go to the workshop, where I kept all my stuff, blueprints, notes, old photos. It was my truth. My personal archive. I closed the door, put the kettle on, and sat down in front of that very case. It stood in front of me like a symbol. Not of money. Not loss. But of choice. Whatever was in it didn't matter now. What mattered was that it became the center of the frame of reference. Either you're around money or you're around something bigger. I lifted the lid. There was only one envelope inside. Mother's handwriting. I opened it. If you're reading this, it means you've done everything you can to avoid becoming me. I've lived my whole life in fear that love is weakness. That trust breaks. I've tried to protect you, and in doing so, I may have been more wrong than anyone before me. I closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, calmly. Not because I forgave. Because I realized, this wasn't about me. It was about them. Their fear. Their past. Their mistakes. And then I made a decision. I packed up and went to her again. This time without anger. No demands. Just to set the record straight. She opened the door slowly. Not surprised. Not scared. It was like she knew. Did you read it? I read it. I realized you did it out of fear. But fear is no reason to steal. It's no reason to lie. She nodded. She sat on the doorstep. I know. I'm not making excuses. I was just afraid you'd forget who you were. I didn't forget. I grew up. And you're still stuck in the past. We talked for a long time. No yelling. No accusations. Just two people who finally allowed themselves to be real. I didn't forgive. She didn't ask. But there were no more lies in this conversation. She held out her hand to me in farewell. What now? Now we go our separate ways. I didn't ride off into the sunset, but into the beginning. Because there were no winners in this story. Only conclusions. And I realized the main one: you can't take back trust. But you can learn to build it again. Not with those who check, but with those who are just around. And the money? The money's still in the briefcase. The one I closed and put in the farthest corner of the workshop. Let it stay there. As a reminder that sometimes the truth is worth more than any amount of money. And if anyone asks me again why I gave away 10 million, I'll tell them simply. Because sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what you really needed. And it's not the numbers. It's you. I went to see the detective one last time. No anger. Just to close the deal. He met me in the same office. Same blinds, same smell of cheap coffee, and the same files that started other people's dramas. So, how did it end? That no one won. He nodded. He knew. He had dozens of stories like that. But mine still hurt. Because it wasn't about money. It was about how even the closest people can become strangers if they forget how to love. I asked. Would you forgive? He looked at me hard. And said. I would accept. Because sometimes forgiveness is a luxury. But acceptance is maturity. That phrase stayed with me. When I got home, I picked up that envelope again. And reread it. No longer through the eyes of a resentful son, but as a man who had realized too much in the last few days. There was pain in every word she said. And an attempt to save something. Not the money. Me. But it was too late. I called my ex. Just to hear a voice that wasn't connected to this mess. We talked for 10 minutes. I didn't say a word about my mother, about the briefcase, about the letter. I just laughed. Because for those 10 minutes, I was myself again. Who I had become, no matter what. And then I sat down at my desk. I took out a blank sheet of paper. And I wrote. If my son ever finds himself in a similar situation, let him know. I won't test him. I'll just be there for him. I don't know if I will have a son. But I knew one thing, it would be my choice. My line. No ciphers. No secrets. Because the most valuable thing we can give each other is not money. It's honesty. I put the paper in the drawer. Locked it. And I went outside. To breathe. Because now I could. For the first time in years, without fear. No looking back. No doubts. I didn't become a hero. I didn't become a martyr. I just became me. And damn it, it was the hardest thing I ever did. A week later, I was back in the house where it all began. My mother's old house. Only this time, alone. She was gone. Forever. Left a key, a letter, and an empty desk. I walked around the rooms. I touched the wall where I drew with a felt-tip pen as a child. I opened the pantry. It was empty. Even the smell that haunted me all my childhood was gone. I went into her bedroom. There was a picture on the nightstand. It's mine. From my high school graduation. I'm standing there in my ridiculous jacket, smiling. It's like I know it's all ahead of me. Like I don't suspect the next 20 years will be a struggle. I took the photo. I put it in my pocket. And then I went down to the basement. There was an old trunk. In it were her things. Letters. Notebooks. Bills. Scraps of her life, boxed together. I pulled out a lighter. I froze. Burn it? Forget? Erase it like it never happened? No. I'm not like that. I just closed the lid. And I signed it, Dare to Look. Because if anyone after me wants to understand what it's like to live on the edge of family and truth, they'll find it all here. I went outside. I locked the door. I put the key under the rock where she and I used to hide our coins when we were kids. Saying goodbye isn't slamming the door. It's a confession, I've passed. I've changed. And I'm moving on. And the next step is forward. I wasn't rich that day. I wasn't loved. I wasn't even happy. But I was alive. And that was goddamn enough. A month later, I was sitting in a corner cafe. Alone. Calm. Next to me, a man in his 50s, an old acquaintance. We bumped into each other by chance. He asked me. Listen, is it true that you left everything and just drove away? I smiled. It's true. I left to come back as someone else. Was it because of her? I wasn't pretending. Yes. The mother. It's a complicated story. Psychological. Smells like drama and a weird case. He laughed. And then he said, "How did you get over it?" I looked him in the eye. I didn't. I accepted it. That's different. Getting over it means forgetting it. Acceptance means living with it and not letting yourself break. He nodded. Shook my hand. He left. And I stayed. And suddenly I realized, I'm not hiding this story anymore. I'm not ashamed. I'm not afraid of being judged. Because it was my journey. And I made it. Now I'm going forward. No games. No ciphers. Just the truth. Just me. And that's more than enough. The next morning I was back in the workshop. The sun was shining through the window at the same angle as the day I'd left with the case. But today was different. I wasn't a fugitive. I was a man who had come back for closure. I sat down at the table. Pulled out the very notebook where I once jotted down ideas, business plans, dreams. And on the last page, I wrote, I forgive you. Not because you're right. But because I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. I closed the notebook. I put it in the drawer. Closed the workshop. And then I looked up and said out loud for the first time in a long time, I'm ready. For real. And in that silence, there was no fear. Just clarity. And freedom.